And we got a question off to our right, your left.
Mr. Jonah?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Pastor Schott. I was wondering, I never knew that Jesus wasn't born at 0. I thought he was. So why was it 3 BC? And please don't say just because that's when he was born, because I feel like that's something that you would say.
Is that what you feel like?
Yeah. I mean, I took 2 of your classes, and I've been coming here for a while, so.
Well, apparently you never learned that there was no year 0.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay? There was no year 0. It went from, and they didn't know it was 1 BC when it was 1 BC, right? That came later, yeah. So, what's your question?
Why is Anno Domini, or Year of the Lord, 1 BC instead of, like, if it's...
Why is he born in 3 years before?
Yeah, why is he born 3 years before the quote-unquote Year of the Lord?
All that was figured out several hundred years later, and they tried to trace back when Jesus was born from about a 300 to 400 year distance, and they missed it by a few years.
Oh.
Okay. Yet the accuracy that they had for the technology, or lack of that they had, was remarkably impressive. But now we know, yeah. So Jesus was born 3 years before he was born.
Okay,
yes.
That's interesting.
Okay, he was. I believe, because of the stars there. I'm not an astrologist, but I believe God did say when he created the stars, they're for signs and for seasons. And then when he told Isaiah, I'm going to give you a sign, and that sign turns out to be the sign that's as high as heaven, I believe to be the Star of Bethlehem, for very good reason. And it's not just from the Revelation 12 passage, it's for other reasons too, but I'll have nothing to say at Christmas if I keep talking about this.
Hey, Bill.
Hey.
So you mentioned earlier about how it's not wise to pray for patience, like it's something we're supposed to do. But isn't that like one of the fruits of the Spirit? And I usually pray for God to give me the fruits of the Spirit.
Do you have the Spirit when you're saved?
Yeah.
Then you should have the fruit of that Spirit.
Definitely.
So you're commanded to walk in that fruit. So you're praying for things you already have. Just do it. Oh, wow, that's a good slogan. Somebody should write that down.
That's it. Perfect.
Yeah. Right through the heart, right?
So far, we only have one question from the online audience, and it circles back to a little bit what you were touching on earlier. This person is a little bit confused, asking the question, isn't the dragon in Revelation 12 Satan?
So Revelation 12 is a heavenly view of an earthly happening. So if you're on the earth, you're going to see Herod trying to kill Jesus, right? Through a mandate to kill all the babies born 2 years old and younger, right? So that's a huge net that he's sure Jesus will get caught up in, and he'll destroy this child. So now what is the heavenly apocalyptic view of that? It's a dragon. Okay, it's a serpent. And he's attacking the child. So yes, I would say the serpent is Satan that is working through King Herod. So on the earth, you're going to see Herod, not a serpent, but the heavenly picture of what's going on in Herod's heart is serpentine or dragon-like. Just like if you saw Judas's heart as he's betraying Christ, it said Satan entered into him. So if you got one of those Revelation 12 views of Judas betraying Jesus, you would probably see him as a great red dragon going in and betraying Jesus. So it's an apocalyptic view of Satan that plays out through King Herod.
Pastor Bill, I just want to say thank you for mentioning people that come late to church and interrupt our worship, because that is us communicating with God, and it's not like 1 or 2 people sneaking in. It's like half the people in our congregation sit down during worship, and it just breaks that communication, and we're not just communicating with God, we're also preparing our hearts to receive the message. And the elders are coming back and forth, and there's so much distraction, and then you're asked to move out and move back in, and it's very sad to me that because it just totally breaks the communication between you and God at that point, and it really just totally affects the rest of the whole
Yeah.
sermon and everything, the message.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree, obviously. Yep. I've got more complaints about how we do church and worship.
So I'm in Romans right now, and I'm in Romans chapter 7, and I was reading the end of it where Paul talks about him being spiritual but also being carnal. And I wanted to read 2 to 3 verses, and then if you could clarify them for me, because they feel confusing to me. It's chapter 7, verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For what I am doing, I do not understand. For what I will do, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. If then I do what I will not to do, I agree with the law that it is good. But now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For to will is present with me, but how to perform what is good I do not find. And I get what he's trying to say.
What could be clearer than that?
Well, I get what he's trying to say, but I guess, I can relate to that because I feel like I try to do, even what Nick was saying about yes, we have the Spirit, so we have the fruits of the Spirit, and we constantly need to rely on Christ to unlock those fruits. But obviously, we get in our own way sometimes, in the sense that we continue to sin, because we all fall short of the glory of God. But I guess I don't understand what he's saying when he says, we're sold under sin, and that nothing good dwells in us.
Yeah, so this has been a tough passage for a lot of people over the centuries, and what some people say, Paul's talking about his pre-conversion experience. Some people say he's not even talking about himself. He uses the word I all the time. I think it's simpler than all of that. I think he's saying, listen, as a born-again believer, I still have a sin struggle. I have flesh that I have to deal with and battle all the time. And even if I don't want to sin, I'm still tempted to sin. So there's going to be this battle between my spirit and my flesh. So he says the law is good, even though the law condemns him in his sin. But if it didn't he says the law brought me recognition of the sin. If it wasn't for the law, I wouldn't know that my sin was actually sin. I wouldn't know it was wrong stuff to do until the law said that this was wrong stuff to do. And he says, because the law directs me that way, the law is actually holy. So the law is trying to produce good, but just like when you see a sign that says, do not touch wet paint, you never would have touched the wall without the sign. But because you were told not to, you do. And the sign that says keep off the grass is the surest way that you put your foot on the grass, right? So the law provokes us, because of our sin nature, provokes us to actually sin, okay? So that's why we use reverse psychology on kids, right? Because if we say don't do that, they hear, what a challenge. Oh, okay, it's on right now, right? I'm going to try to do that thing now. So Paul's battling that flesh and spirit thing in Romans 7 and saying the battle is very real. He even experiences the battle. And therefore, daily we have to crucify our flesh and live according to the Spirit, because the flesh is ever present and waiting to bring us down, right? So therefore, you have to take every thought captive to obedience to Christ, because your thoughts can lead you down fleshly roads and so forth. So I believe Paul is simply saying that even him, as close to Christ as he was, still has to battle this stuff.
Hi, Pastor Bill.
Hi.
I have a question when it comes to being a Christian and knowing what's happening politically in our country. Now, I never cared for politics up until 4 years ago. And there's this idea that we're slowly moving towards a post-Christian country. Some people might say we're kind of there because there are Christians and a lot of people don't go to church anymore. Well, I was listening to a pastor online who's from Australia, and he said that being in a post-Christian country has actually brought revival. And it's kind of similar to, it was an unfortunate event that happened with Selah, but look at the fruit that's coming from that. So how do you operate as a Christian knowing that you want to hold on to this identity of the U.S.? And a lot of times it's like, okay, how much do we hold on to a country when we're not from here? We're of the Lord, we're above that. So I find that I struggle between, okay, I'm a Christian, but I see what's going on and it makes me mad. And knowing that as we move towards something that we wouldn't want to happen, but that's where revival actually happens and people actually have a more sincere relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so, we're told to pray for our rulers and authorities, even if it's Caesar that's ruling over us. We're to always pray for them, because the idea of praying for them is that they become Christian, right? And that would change everything for everybody. But God gives us bad leaders when we're a bad country. And the idea is it will cause revival. More people will cry out to God under oppression than they'll call out to him during good times. So it's a repeated cycle throughout the Old Testament. And one singular book that shows that cycle clearly is the book of Judges. It's there's sin in the land, things get really terrible, they cry out for a judge, God gives them a judge, the judge delivers them, and as soon as they're living good and right, they start sinning again. And they need judge after judge after judge after judge. So I have written on my whiteboard right now, I wish I took a picture of it because I don't think I have it memorized, but it's something I saw that said something along the lines of, strong men create good times create lazy men create hard times, and then those hard times will create strong men. So I wrote it on the board to say, where are we losing our living well in this thing? And it's when it's good times, we're in the good times, and it creates lazy men or weak men. So if we can have the good times and have the self-control and discipline and everything we need to maintain the good times, and that's going to come through words like reverence, having your reverence for God in the good times, and holiness during the good times, and so forth. So I think what humanity's never been able to do is to honor and worship God during good times. Every famine you see in the Old Testament is during a period of sin in that land. And now when you stop the rain and the food doesn't grow, people become very much prayer warriors when they don't have food, right? I always tell the kids, this is why we give you tests in school, because you become prayer warriors, right? Okay? So, so it could be a very loving thing for God to give you bad leadership, because it may be a call to look to him again. Okay? So if we ever get bad leadership, maybe that's what's going on. Okay? But it's always a call to remain faithful. That's always going to be where it's at, to be faithful.
Hi there.
Hi.
That's so funny. She says that saying all the time.
What's that?
The one you just said that I can't repeat. The good times.
Oh, yeah?
She says that. That's hysterical.
Maybe you posted it and that's where I got it from.
Maybe.
Gotcha. Okay.
I just have a quick question, something that I've been kind of mulling over, and I don't know if I'm the only one in the room that doesn't know the answer to this, but I was reading recently the story of Abraham and Sarah, and what is your take on this? Because there's conflicting commentary online, obviously there always is, but when God tells them they're going to have a child and Abraham laughs, and God continues to speak, okay, but this is what will happen, and And then when Sarah laughs, God right away says, "Why did you laugh?"
Yeah.
And I've read, okay, Abraham's laugh was more based on he laughed like, this is hysterical that you're going to do this, God. But he laughed in belief, where Sarah laughed in disbelief. So I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, so all we have is that they both laughed, that God was okay with the one and not okay with the other. So I would say it's safe to say Sarah had a not okay laugh, which was probably, "Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous." And Abraham an okay laugh, like maybe, "What joy this is. Oh my gosh, this is really going to happen," type of thing. Which is typical when the woman has to carry the child and the man doesn't, right? So it might have something to do with that, you know. But I think it's right to say there's certainly a right way to laugh about that and a wrong way to laugh about that. And apparently Abraham had the right laugh and Sarah didn't. It's the only thing I can do because we're not given more. So every commentary, literally their guess is as good as your guess at that point. We're not given any more to go on. So we take it from there and realize that God wouldn't take an insincere laugh and treat it as sincere and vice versa. So they had to be one from a wrong heart, one from a right heart. That's all I could tell you about that, yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to address the last issue concerning the government in the United States. I would say to the people here, and please, if you disagree, let me know. You need to educate yourself as the founding of this country, our history in this country, and the covenants of the founding fathers that they made with God and brought him in at the very beginning in the foundations. There's no other nation prior to the United States of America that gave the people the opportunity to choose, okay? And it was godly men, godly America, godly people in the United States that did this form of government here. But the left-wing people don't want and have been dumbing down America now for a long time, so we don't know what the history is and where our heritage is in one nation under God.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to encourage the people there. If we look and listen to the wrong information, you're going to come to wrong conclusions. So when you are looking at the news media, you think everything is going to hell in a handbasket. I'm done.
Yep. Okay, now, I get insecure when, this is just being transparent, I get insecure when there's not questions but commentary, because let's say I don't disagree with the commentary, but if I did, what do I do? Okay? So I don't disagree with what's been given, but I don't want to be in a position to feel like I have to say, well, I don't want to create an argument, but I also don't want to let commentary go that I disagree with, because then everybody's going to assume I agree with it. Because I get the emails, right? So I really want to do Q&A. I appreciate comments, especially when you say you really agree with me. I really appreciate that. But I do want it to be Q&A only because it's just so awkward for me. As I hear comments, I'm literally praying, please don't let it be something that I got to say, I don't really want that said, We could talk afterwards about all that stuff, but I don't want people to think that I'm coming from somewhere that I never said myself, right? Is that fair enough? Okay, so just a pure Q&A, and then you could amen or curse me after the fact, or share your stories with me after the fact. But I really do get nervous with the comments because I will feel the need to correct it if I don't agree with it, and that's just not what this is supposed to be. Okay? All right.
So let's end from an online question. This reads, do you think the church losing their holiness has something to do with pastors being people pleasers and not pleasing God?
What did I just say about comments? All right. There's no question that that's a big part of it. I don't think that's all of it. I think it's a little more of a symptom than the root of it. I think there's I think it starts with a lack of good teaching. I mean, when I study things like communion, and, and when we give communion, we do what pastors call fence the table. Do you guys know what that term means? What it means is, because Paul says people eat and drink judgment upon themselves if they do this thing wrong, you're to fence the table, put up a fence so that people that aren't supposed to be taking it can't take it. And you simply say, because Paul will say people eat and drink judgment on themselves. And so you say, hey, listen, if you're, not a believer, you're an unconfessed sin, just let it go by or whatnot. You fence the table. But why am I applying that to this question? Because when I say I think it starts with poor teaching, I can't help but think that's a wrong thing to say at communion, because when I read the very scriptures that tell us about eating and drinking judgment on yourselves, Paul says they were having feasts. Communion used to be a feast. Okay? The communion in the Bible was a feast. And people were showing up early, eating all the food and getting drunk on the wine. And Paul's saying, stop that. And then he gets back to that complaint and says, you're eating and drinking judgment on yourselves because you're committing gluttony and you're becoming drunk at something that's supposed to be a holy communion. And he says, you're eating, drinking judgment on yourselves. It's not, the way we present it to people, it has nothing to do with gluttony and drunkenness. We don't give you enough, okay, to commit those sins. All right? So I don't think we can do the thing that Paul was warning against, because we give you a nibble and a sip. We already fixed the problem, so to speak. Okay? So, but is this the first time you've heard that? And yet communion happens once a month, so the teaching hasn't happened. So it's things like that I think are misleading. Now some people might say, I misunderstand the text, and my answer is always going to be, then read the text and teach it to me the way you understand me to be wrong. But I look at it over and over again, and it's drunkenness and gluttony before everybody even gets there. There's no food and everybody's drunk. And that's what he's complaining about. And I don't see that as a problem in our church. Okay? So it's just not teaching what the text teaches. And we ought to be faithful to the teaching of the text. And I'm open to being shown that I got it wrong, because I don't hear that teaching anywhere ever, okay? But anyways, it's little slips like that add up that I think takes the reverence away. I think honestly, this Protestant idea of, gosh, how awkward is this, of storefront churches. You're next door to a fitness place. So people are supposed to walk in with reverence for God while people are going through the next door for a jog on a treadmill, where we don't have a building, quite frankly, with a steeple. Why are steeples on churches? Draw your gaze up to heaven. Remind you there's another world up there, man. Okay? Steeple is the gaze, put your gaze up to heaven, and usually there's a cross up there. I want to go up there, it's through that cross. It's a great image. And we don't have that in Protestantism very often. Stained glass windows, have I mentioned that lately? Okay, we should be looking at stained glass and be reminded of the gorgeous city you're going to live in. Won't that motivate you to get there? Okay? So when Paul talks about reminders, remind people of this. When Peter says it's good to remind you of these things, Christianity is all about reminders. How many times did God do something great through somebody in the Old Testament? He says, now make a stone pillar there, so that when people come by, they can say, what the stone's for, and you're going to remind them of what God has done here. Okay? It's hard to do in these squared off boxes of churches that we worship in. Okay? Now listen, we don't have a Vatican with billions of dollars to build cathedrals. Protestantism doesn't have that. Okay? So this is what we have. But we need ways of reminding you visually, audibly, sensibly, every way your senses can take it in. Okay? Because Jesus became available to our senses. And that's why the Apostle John can say, that which we have seen with our eyes, that which we have heard with our ears, that which our hands have handled concerning the word of life, that's what we're proclaiming to you, is God was made available to our senses. And quite frankly, the Catholics get that very, very well. Their places of worship are beautiful. Okay, their buildings are beautiful. You know that's a building designed to learn about God in when you walk in. Okay? So give yourself those reminders. Have your own visual reminders. I think it'll help the holiness tremendously. Yeah, so I don't know how to end that well. Okay.